Okay, so we are going to do a tutorial on setting up third-party authorizations using Rails and Devise. So we're going to set up Facebook, Google, and GitHub. The process for all of them is roughly the same. So you can do them as you go. Like you can do them all at once, and then at the end of it, you have 3 that you can do. And then if there's other ones you want to do, like Twitter, for example, it's all set up the same way. So you just kind of do it that way. So I already set up a project folder. Just generated a Rails project and then set up a Devise user and Devise views, things that we'll need. So at this point, if you're trying to do third-party authentication, you should probably already know how to do setting up a Rails project. So I skipped all that and we got that already set up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with Facebook. So for Facebook, we're going to go to it's developers.facebook.com. And so this is where you'll start setting up any of your auths. They all have that. GitHub will have a page, Google will have a page, and we'll go over each of those. And if you don't know where to go, the easy way to look at it is they're almost always associated with developers. So if you're like, well, it'd be the Twitter page, you can Google, Twitter developer, and it'll bring that up for you. So what you're going to do, if you're not already signed in, you're not already registered, you'll need to register and get everything set up first. And then you're going to go over to My Apps, and you're going to create an app. And you'll get a name for it. I'm going to call it OAuth tutorial. It's good habit to name your different apps online the same as you have like your project folder. To keep it all the same, it makes it super, super simple, especially when you start deploying. It helps you keep track of everything a lot easier. So we'll create the app ID, verify that you're not a robot. All right, so you're over here. So next thing I'm gonna do is go to settings, go to basic. And it already has your app ID and your app secret. You're gonna need those. So go ahead and save those somewhere. I'm just gonna bring up a little notepad here. So we're gonna save the app ID first, and then the app secret here. We'll grab that. Now you want to make sure that you store these in a place that no one else is going to get them. And when you put them into your project, which I'll show you in a moment, you'll want to put them in some type of environment variable and not directly in the project. So once this is before this video is even posted, I'm going to have deleted all these app secrets and stuff. So I don't mind showing you them, but keep that in mind with your own projects, or if you do decide to do your own tutorial, that you either don't show the app ID and app secret, or that you make sure that you're deleting them after you show them. Okay, so here in app domains, we're going to do localhost, like that. So what that's doing, that's for, because you're developing locally, and when you launch your Rails server, it goes to the local host with on your browser. If you were to have this say on Heroku or something like that, then the app domain would change. It'd be different. So I'm gonna go down, skip all this stuff. You can fill all the stuff if you want to. You don't really have to. You're gonna click Add Platform. And since it's a website, you're gonna click Website. Okay. And so it's going to ask for your URL, and it's again that localhost 3000. That's the port that Rails server uses. If you're using a different port, if you're using 8080 or you've customized it and you've used something different, that's what you'll need to put here. Save your changes. All right, so from here, we are gonna do, so that's got Facebook set up, right? So we're gonna go to GitHub and get GitHub set up before we even get into our code. So GitHub, you just go right into your GitHub. And you come over here to where your picture's at. And you're gonna click on Settings. And then down here at the bottom, you're gonna click on Developer Settings and OAuth Apps. And then you're gonna click a New. And again, just keep all the names the same. So your homepage URL is going to be localhost 3000 again. That part. You can do your application description. So every one of these will have a particular callback. So that it all follows sort of the same syntax. So it's going to be your domain. So the part front of it, your domain, where the callback is. There's auth and whatever you're using. So in this case, GitHub or Google have their own, and then callback. So we're going to register that. Awesome. Same thing, you've got a client ID and a client secret there. So let's grab those for GitHub. Client ID. I tend to copy and paste these. It helps eliminate typos. You spend 4 hours trying to figure out why it's not working and then realize that you just typed something wrong when you were setting this all up. And then we're going to go to Google. So Google is console.developers.google.com. Again, if you don't remember these links, you can just, Google developer, Google, and it'll get you here. That's because I deleted that. Okay. So in your dashboard, okay. We're going to create a new project. I had one created. Like I said, I'll have it set up deleted. We're going to call it OAuth tutorial. Create. All right, so now you can verify that you have it. It's right up here, right next to the Google APIs. Now you're going to go to credentials. Create credentials. OAuth client ID. and you'll get this. It'll say, to create an OAuth client, you must first set a product name on the consent screen. So we'll go to consent screen. As external. So that's anyone with a Google account can sign in. You can set up your application name here. You need, at minimal, application name and your email. This is important if you have your app live. If you have it like on Heroku or something, you'll need to put in for your domains. But if you're just doing it locally, don't worry about any of this. In fact, if you even try to do localhost 1000, it'll give you cannot contain path, valid domain. And if you just try to do local host, invalid domain, must be a top private domain. So, all right, so we'll save that. Cool. Now we'll go to credentials. We'll create our credentials, OAuth client ID. This is for a web application. You can give it a name. What you name it doesn't really matter. All right, so your authorized JavaScript origins. This is where you'll put in your local host. So you're going to make sure that you put in your local host and whatever your port is. Again, if you changed it, the default for Rails is 3000, but if you changed it, you'll need to put whatever it is you changed it to there. And then just like in GitHub, we have a redirect callback. That goes in the authorized redirect URI. And it follows that same syntax, your domain, auth, who you're authorizing, Google, OAuth 2, and callback. All right, so we're going to create that. And again, we get a client ID, so we'll copy that. For Google. And we get the client secret that we'll copy also for Google. And then now you have that for your credentials. And so you can do this. There's a lot of different ones you can do. For Twitter, DigitalOcean has a login ability. There's a few others, just a lot of different ones. So if there's one that you like if you wanted to use Twitter instead, Google developer Twitter page, go on. It's the same process. Register for whatever their version of OAuth is and get that client ID and client secret. All right, so now we're going to go back into our project. We've got a few things that we're going to add. All right, so we're going to start with gems. So let's go down to our gem file. I'm just going to put them all down here. Okay, so the first one you're going to want is Omniauth. -Facebook. And then you're going to need Omniauth -GitHub. And you can look up these gems. They all have documentation on how to set them up. Most of them are really good about telling you that the documentation, how it's set up, is different if you're using Devise than just using the gem alone. So keep that in mind. I almost forgot. I also, sometimes you don't really need to, but I go ahead and add Omniauth stand alone. These should come with Omniauth. I've had some issues when I was doing my own project where it wasn't working, and just simply adding the base gem Omniauth fixed it. So I just go ahead and do it. It's just one gem, and then you don't have to worry about it. So the next one is gem Omniauth Google OAuth 2. Make sure I spell that right. That one's for Google. You notice that one's a little bit different. It's just not Omniauth Google. Part of that has to do with Google changed how their API works. So instead of updating the current gem that they had, they created a new one. So they had Omniauth Google OAuth 2. And then last, you'll need Active Record Session Store. And this will help with storing the session so that they persist. All right, so we got all of that done. I'm going to go ahead and run bundle install. Get all those put in. Excellent. I mean, you got a lot of stuff here. So a little tip in case you don't know, you can see some of the Omniauth stuff here right here. But if you're ever having trouble finding something that you installed, especially once you get into a project that has like a really long list of gems, and you want to make sure that that one got installed properly, a real quick way to do that is to do bundle list, and it will redo your gems in alphabetical order. So then you can just go and find it a whole lot easier. Okay, so the next part is setting up the environment variables. This is what you'll be using as we configure Devise to tell it what your secret is and what your IDs are, because you don't want to put those directly into it. So what I'm going to do in this one is we're going to use the new built-in credentials. It's something kind of new in Rails. You can use environment variables. You can do, .env, the .env gem as well. But Rails comes with this built-in credentials YAML. If you haven't used it, a lot of people haven't. It's okay. It's pretty simple. Under your config folder, look for this credentials.yaml file here. If you go into it, it's just one really long bit here. Don't edit this. Don't type in this. Don't change this. Don't delete this. To edit this file, you're going to go into your terminal and you're going to type in all capitals editor equals open quote, and then whatever your editor is. I use Atom, so I'll be using Atom. If you're using Sublime, then you would put Sublime, so on and so forth. So you're going to pass in a wait command, close that in. What that's going to do is if you don't do this part and you just do the rest of it, when the file opens, it's going to open and close. It's not going to wait for you to do anything. It's going to open it, close it. This is telling it, like, open the file, wait until I close it so that I can do stuff to it. Rails credentials edit. wait. There we go. Okay, so this is your credentials file. You notice it's a little different than, so it's got this 13.750.credentials. So this is kind of like a temporary file. What you're going to do is you're going to set up for each one of these. So let's set up for Facebook. And you're going to set it up the same on each one, right? So what you name them in here doesn't really matter. What matters is that whatever you name them here, it's the same everywhere else, right? So just like your environment variables, whatever you name it, it's the same. So, I mean, you can name it Bob, doesn't matter, as long as you remember that it's named Bob. But for future you and for other people who might look at your code, of course, they won't be looking at this, but they will be looking at your call to these variables. It helps to let them know what it is, right? So we're going to name the first part of this Facebook, excuse me, client ID. And Facebook client, if I can spell, secret. All right, so that's where your ID and your secret comes in play. So we had Facebook client ID and Facebook client secret. And we're just going to repeat this same thing, excuse me, for each of them. So we got what? We had Facebook, we had Google, and GitHub, right? So Facebook, Google, GitHub. All right, so here's GitHub's. Let's do theirs. And Google. Oh, it looks like I copied down the wrong thing for Google. So let me go grab that again real quick. Let's go ahead and do this though. And then I'll go grab that Google client ID right here. All right. So you're going to save, and then you're going to, none of this will work, none of this will persist until you close that file. So if you look down at the bottom of my terminal, as soon as I close this file, it'll pop up and say file encrypted and saved. You can verify this. You can always just open the editor again and make sure that that stuff is the same in there, but you can also just verify it by doing Rails credentials show. And so you see all your credentials are in here. This is pretty handy if for whatever reason you need to reuse this, like you're using, you want to verify that the client ID that you typed in is the same. Maybe you're getting a weird error. It's saying like not valid. credentials and you want to verify that what you typed in is the same as what's on Google's website, you can go to show and see it, excuse me, and see it and verify it that way. All right, so now we got to configure Devise. So we're going to go into config, right? So config. You're going to go to initializers. So go to initializers and look for devise.rb. That. And you're going to go down near the bottom. So we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. And what you're going to look for Omniauth. And this right here, comment it so you can see it a little better. This right here is the basic setup of how this is going to work. You're going to do config Omniauth for each one. So one for GitHub, one for Google, one for whatever you're using, Twitter. If you've got 20 different third-party authentications, you'll have 20 different config.omniauth. And then the app ID and the app secret. If you want to put in your app ID and your app secret in here just while you're developing it, just to make sure that it works, and then later on move those to an environment, that's fine. Just don't leave them there. Make sure that you do use an environment variable here. So what we're going to do, I have this in my notes, so I'm going to copy and paste it, and then we're going to go over it. So we won't spend 10 minutes typing this all out. All right. So for each one of these, so I start with Facebook, config.omniauth Facebook. To call from your Rails credentials, the secrets that we did earlier, you're going to type in rails.application credentials, that's your credentials file.dig. It's telling it to dig through that. Because what it's doing is it's taking everything that you put in that file and hashing it all together, salting it, scattering it, bring it back into whole, whatever, does a bunch of stuff to it. And what that means is in order to call it, you need to be able to find that particular thing. And that's where this comes in. So what you're saying is dig through all that, find the Facebook block, so that the block that we named it. Again, you can name anything you want. You can name it the Bob, but this helps you keep track. Just name it Facebook. The Facebook client ID. So find the block, Facebook, and in that, find the Facebook client ID. And then you're going to do the same thing, Rails application credentials dig. So rails.application.credentials.dig. In parentheses, your Facebook block, and then your Facebook client secret. Right now, if I bring up the show, you can see, so it's Facebook. What it's doing, it's digging through that whole thing and it's looking for the Facebook block, and then the Facebook client ID. And then the second time I call it, it's looking for the Facebook client secret. Right? So scopes are optional. What this does is it gives you some manner of control over what information you're getting from their login. You don't have to put these in. If you're running into weird errors, some errors that are like that you need email or profile or something like that, go and add a scope. All I'm doing here is saying that I want whatever's publicly accessible out of their public profile and their email address. Here it is. I don't need this. That's all I need. I need that's it. And then you do the same thing for GitHub, right? So config.omniauth GitHub. calling your credentials, calling the GitHub block, getting the GitHub client ID, then call that block again, get the GitHub secret, scope, user, public repo. So each one of these, GitHub, Facebook, Google, Twitter, DigitalOcean, all of them are going to have different names for their scopes. So you'll have to look that up if you do want to include scope. As you can see, like Facebook is public profile and email, whereas GitHub is public repo, and Google OAuth is user info dot and user info dot profile. So .email dot profile. So they're all gonna be a little different. So that's something you'll have to get into the documentation for each one of these individually about. And again, it's optional, so you don't even have to use them. I'm gonna let that sit there for just a second so you can look at those and get them copied out. Again, you can just pause the video too and take a look at it. All right, so the next thing you're gonna need is that session store. So when we did our gems, or gem file, we just active record session store here, and we can verify that it installed. So to use that, we have to add to our initializers a new file. Now, sometimes I've seen where it adds this for you. Sometimes it doesn't. It's fine if it doesn't. If it does, cool, put it in there. If not, just create your own session stored.rb. And so what you're going to put in there is rails.application.config.session store active record store key Devise Omniauth session. And that's just persisting the session. That's all that's doing. So just copy and paste that and put that in there. All right, so the next thing that we're going to need to do is set up some migrations. All right, so we got to add a few things to the user's migration. Now, I already created a user with Devise, Rails new Devise user, generate user. So if you haven't done that yet, you do need to create your user. It doesn't have to be called user, just whatever it is you're calling it. I'm using user. You can look in the database. So Devise create user, that's what that did. But we're going to add to that. So you're going to run Rails generate migration update users. We'll go to that file. Okay, so we're going to add a couple columns to the user, and I'll just go ahead and give them to you here. It's going to add a column, users provider. That's a string with a limit of 50. Default is blank. And this user ID. And then we're going to create a sessions migration. So Rails G migration create sessions. All right, so let's go and look in that. So let's take a look at what we're going to put there. I'm going to copy and paste it, and then we'll go over it. My notes. Okay. Oh, not that part. Okay, so we have to have the session ID and then the data block. So this just persists the session. You don't really need to go into a whole lot into this. You do need to add a couple indexes. So after the first end, so you have the end that's to this do block. The do block ends. You're going to add a couple indexes. Both are for sessions, for the session ID and the updated at. This is more important when you get a little more advanced into it. Just go ahead and put it in for right now. I'll leave this here for a second and take a look at it. Okay, so now we're going to migrate that. Oh, wait. I was messing around with this earlier and my database is probably still there. Yeah. So it's okay. Okay. There we go. All right, so that migrated everything and gave us our schema with our users and our sessions, and our users have a provider and a user ID. So now you have to go into the user model. And one of the reasons why I had in this tutorial, you set up your credentials with the respective websites first with Google and Facebook, it's because sometimes it takes a few minutes. If you were to set up your code first and then went to say Google and set up your credentials and then turn around and immediately tested your code, it may not work. And you may not understand why. You're trying to fix things when all you needed to do was wait 10 minutes. So if you do them first, get them all set up on their side. Google set up, get your Facebook set up. Then while you're doing your code, it should give it time to populate. So here, you have all these different things that's already there. What we're going to add is for our Omniauth, right? So we're going to add, we're just going to go ahead and do this down here. Omniauthable. Providers. And then colons, you're going to list the ones you have. So we have Facebook, right? We have GitHub, and we've got Google. Right? And remember, Google is the one that's different. Google isn't just Google, it's Google OAuth 2. Okay, so this next bit is how you're going to be able to run all of them at once. So if you go to each one of these individually documentation, they'll show you how to implement their one individual thing. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to create a method. And it's going to be self.create from provider data. And then we're going to pass in provider data. So as each provider does that callback and sends in its data, this is where it's going to go. Where, and I'm just going to type this out and then we'll go over it. So where provider data dot provider UID is provider data dot UID. So you should recognize this from the table that we created, right? So the provider and the UID. So this is what we're grabbing. We're grabbing that information. Dot first or create. And let's pass up a variable user. So this first or create method is something that comes with this. And what it's going to do is it'll either fetch the user if it's already in the database or create one if it's not present. So in this block, you're going to tell it what it is you're grabbing. So user for this one, we're going to do email. And that's going to be equal to provider data dot info dot email. And we're going to use password, user dot password equals, this is where Devise comes in, friendly token. So this will set an arbitrary password for the user since it's not exposed by the provider. When you're using Devise, every user has to have a password, but you know, if you click on Google and you log in with something with Google, you're not providing it a password. You're not logging in with your Google email address and then giving it a password. Google's authorizing you to the app. So this creates that password for you. All right, so now we've got to create a controller. So let's go and create controller Omniauth. It's another one of those things where you can name it pretty much anything you want, but let's stay consistent. Get an error. I misspell something. Unexpected. Oh, okay. I did it in my blog. That's my bad. There we go. All right, let's get it. All right, let's try that again. Cool. All right, so let's take a look at something real quick. Let's go and fire up our server. Just make sure this is working. Cool. All right, we're on Rails. And if you've used Devise, you'll know that if you go to user sign up, you'll have that. Now you notice we've already got Facebook, GitHub, and Google off. These are added as you set them up when you're Devise, when you're configuring your devise.rb, this adds them to it. And I'll show you how that does that here in a moment. All right, so let's go into our controller, our Omniauth controller. And we're going to create several methods. You have to have a method for each third-party authentication. So one for Facebook, one for Google, one for Twitter, one for whatever you're using. But they're all going to follow the basic same pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one from my notes and put it in here, and we'll go over it. All right. So the way to do it is define your method, name it after what it is. So for this one, it's Facebook. Then we're going to create an instance variable for the user, and that's equal to user.create from provider data, and that's from the Omniauth. That's what that's doing here. If user persisted, so if it's saved, sign in and redirect at user. Now you can redirect this to anywhere you want. This is going to redirect it to the user page, right? So if you're wanting it to go somewhere else, if you had like maybe a special page that you wanted Facebook users to go to versus Google users, you could put that in here. These are just your error handling. If it doesn't save, it's going to redirect to new user registration. So it's just going to go right, it's going to stay right on that screen where they tried to register in the first place. So you're going to do this for each one. So we're going to speed this up a little bit. We're going to do GitHub. All right, so if you look, it's the same thing. So the only thing that we did different was, sorry. I'm missing an end. I'm always missing an end. Move these over, make it a little easier to see it. There we go. There we go. So we're going to repeat the process. And I'm a little OCD about how this like lines up. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to go all over. There we go. And then we also did Google. So we're going to grab one for Google. All right. So again, make sure you're not just guessing. Google is a little different. Google's OAuth 2. So make sure that you've caught that. But if you look, you notice everything else is exactly the same. That's from GitHub data, that's from Google data, providers from Facebook. So the only thing that changes is just a couple little places where it calls that specific name. Everything else is the same. So I'll give you a second to take a look at this. We're going to do a failure callback. And that's just if none of those work, it's just not working. Now, so earlier I showed you how those links just kind of appeared on the login page. You how somehow just magically GitHub and Facebook and Google, those links just appeared. Well, they're in your views. So if you haven't generated your Devise views yet, go ahead and do that. And you'll go into Views, Devise, and you'll look for Shared, the Shared folder. You're going to go to Links. And if you look down here, the very last one, if Devise mapping Omniauthable. Right? Resource class, Omniauth providers, each do. Link to sign in with, and that's where those links come from. As soon as you declare that model Omniauthable, sees this and adds those links. So the last thing we're going to need to do is set up the routes. So find your routes under config. So you already have a Devise for users if you set up your users using generate and Devise. What we're going to do is we're going to specify that for its controllers that we want Omniauth, the callbacks. Remember those callback links that we were using? So we want the Omniauth callbacks to be handled by Omniauth. So this Omniauth, this name comes from what I named the controller up here. So if you named it something else, you'll need to put something else in there. If you named it, Bob controller, you need to put that in there. This is where consistency is key. Like, you don't have to go back and look. You don't have to go back and be like, wait, what did I name that controller? Oh, it's the Omniauth controller. And future view, well, thank you very much for it. All right, so let's take a look and see if these work. Now we messed around with the route, so let's go ahead and restart our server. Now, these don't always work on the first try, but if there's any error messages, we'll work them out and figure out what's going on. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is sign in with Facebook. Let's try that one. Takes me to Facebook. There I am. Continue. Omniauth callbacks controller. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's go to our controller. We have Facebook, right? Okay. So let's go into our routes. Let's take a look at our routes. Make sure I spelled that right. Omniauth. Oh, see, there's my error right there. Callbacks. All right, let's restart the server. Okay, let's try that again. Undefined method set flash message. Oh, okay. So this will happen, and it's weird. I've done this in several apps. Sometimes it works, and sometimes the flash message doesn't work. So if you get this error, I'm glad it came up on this one so you can see what it is. You're going to go to your controllers. just anywhere you see set flash message, just get rid of that. So you have one here. You'll have one for each one. Just go ahead and get rid of them. It has to do with a deprecated package. I think it depends on when the app was created as whether or not that would work or what version of something you're using. So if you do get that error, just go and fix that. All right, let's try this again. Facebook. I'm glad these errors are coming up so you can see them. All right, so now it's right back to here because that's where we redirect it to. If you had a root page or wherever, that's where it would redirect to, whatever you redirected it. But we can verify that something is there because we can go to users, edit, and see there's my email address from Facebook. All right, so I'm going to cancel that. We'll get rid of that. We'll go back to users, sign up. All right, let's try GitHub. Let's make sure GitHub is good. All right, so here's GitHub, what that looks like. It wants a password. Undefined method create from GitHub data. Oh, yeah. That's another thing that's changed recently. All right, so this one of those things where if it's an older version, it'll work this way. If not, just change this to provider on all of it. Should have caught that earlier. All right, let's try that again. Get up. There, cool. So we can do the same thing. We can go to users edit. So there's my email address from GitHub. So we'll cancel that account. And we'll try. Google's the one that gets a little finicky. We'll see. And that one worked. Cool. And you can look in your console. I canceled those other accounts, but you'll see with Google. So you saw that it didn't create a user via the form or anything. We have this one. And it tells you who it was, Google Auth too, right? So let's go back. I'm gonna force the log out here. Delete. Okay. That should have deleted that. Yeah, so we're gonna sign it. All right, so we'll do Facebook again. Okay. So if I go here, now we're gonna do user.all again. So now we've got two. We've got the Google and the Facebook. If you look, Google, Facebook. So this helps you in your app too. You'll be able to know who the provider was. If for some reason you wanted something very specific, like if you wanted your app to display something that's for Facebook users or something that's for Google users, maybe it's a show page for an application that it's different for each one. Maybe it's a Facebook game that also happens to have a Google game that so if it's a Facebook user signing up, you want them to go to the Facebook page where your game is at. Or if it's a Google person signing up, you want them to go to Google Play Store. So you could set all that up by calling on the provider on which one it is. All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a little something. Leave comments below. I'm still learning myself. So if there's something you saw that maybe I did that's an extra step that doesn't need to be done, please let me know. And if there's any particular tutorials you want to see involving Rails, especially in security and authorizations in the future, just leave a comment below or send me a message. And I'll respond as soon as I can.